if Allen Robinson gets traded for pennies, I don't want to say pennies, but if he gets traded for a value that's less than his, like we're gonna flip some tables. And Jake, it's table flipping time, my man.
I'm with you, man. I am absolutely with you. Any Rams fan that isn't upset about this return, I don't know what to tell you, because it's not like the Steelers. And here's the thing, Cam, this is where we're going to get into money a little bit here, right? We're going to get into value, these picks. So at the end of the day, when the Rams went out and they traded for a Von Miller, okay, they gave up a second and a third with the stipulation that the Broncos were taking care of it. For the most part, they're just taking care of that contract. They're eating the rest of it. It's a 1-year deal. The Rams don't have to take up too much. Because of it, the Broncos get more in return, right? They get more draft capital. You do this when you're a team that's, not going to make the playoffs, not going to win a Super Bowl that year. You make this trade at the deadline, and then next year you use those picks to help you in the draft, right? So you do that, but the Rams aren't doing that. And that was the thing that kind of threw us, for a loop, because when we talked about this, like, you were like, wait, a pick swap? Come again? Like, we texted about this. And look, I'll be honest with you. I didn't think it was going to be a ton until I read that the Rams were only saving $1.6 million. So I'm like, okay, if they're only saving $1.6 million in this trade, then they have to be getting at least a 7th. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 4th. But then I remembered that it's Les Snead, who's the general manager, who routinely gets fleeced. I mean, let's just be honest here. Allen Robinson is getting paid pretty much his entire contract. The Rams are paying almost all of it. To not have him on the roster, to move up 17 spots in the 7th round, you couldn't even get a 7th rounder out of that. You couldn't even get a 2024 pick out of that. You settled for a pick swap in the 7th round. Like, I mean, at that point, and this is going to bring us to our Vibe or Don't Vibe with segment. Les Snead's lack of trade return is becoming a serious issue for the Rams. Vibe or don't vibe with Cam?
Jake, I'm gonna say I don't vibe with it. It is concerning right now. It is concerning now what Les Snead is doing. But what I will say is that he has found success, right? I mean, my man hit a Super Bowl, in the recent years. So I don't vibe with his lack of trade return. But what I do vibe with is his ability to win. I do vibe with that, right? It doesn't seem like he's getting much value with these trades, especially with Jalen Ramsey. And I think he got, it was like as a third or a tight end or something like that. So it's the value is not there. Bobby Wagner didn't get much for him either. So it's like, hey, you got these premium athletes. You got some Hall of Famers on your team, and you're not really getting much for them. One thing I will say, though, Jake, is I stopped discounting 7th round picks and, of course, undrafted players. But I think we talked about in our last episode, we talked about Brock Purdy and his resurgence and just to see him elevate. I think now when it comes to the draft, of course, your top guys, your top tier guys are the guys that are going to, make plays and really, push your franchise forward. But I do think there are sleepers. Wink, wink, a little nod to our next series here. But I do think there are sleepers in the draft. And so if the Rams are able to get a sleeper for Allen Robinson, job well done. But it's not looking ugly. So no vibe. It is looking ugly right now. So no vibe for me on that topic. Jake, what are your thoughts?
I am going to absolutely vibe that it is becoming a serious issue for the Rams. Hear me out, Cam. All right. Because I like Les Snead. I know some people are going to be like, no, you don't. No, I actually do. Okay. I was the one that, banged the table to keep him with McVay. There were a lot of people that are saying the next head coach should pick a new GM. I wanted to stick by him, see what he could do without Fisher. But let's be honest here. If he's still with Fisher, he doesn't have a Super Bowl. You could argue he has more, leverage, more wiggle room to make moves because, he has a really good head coach right now. But would he still have that with Jeff Fisher? That's the thing. So I think a lot of the success Les Snead has had, while he deserves credit, that credit also has to go to Sean McVay, who the moment he stepped in the building, the moment Les Snead stepped in the building, things were different. You could tell. And I mean, obviously, you're in the building as well. Like, things are different. They're not the so-sar Rams anymore. Like, you guys had a chance to win some games, in my opinion, that, if Sean McVay was the head coach, you guys win. Like, I mean, that's just the facts. Yeah. You were in those close games. It's constantly, we should have won that game, coming from Rams fans. So my point is that when Les Snead steps in the building, he changes some things. But and they get rid of, thank God, the four pillars or whatever Billy Devaney had before, where they wouldn't draft any guys with character issues. And we talked about Janoris Jenkins didn't do anything when he got to the NFL. Nothing, not a peep. So anyway, he did change some things. But when you look at Sean McVay, the moment he steps in, they go to the playoffs. First time since 2004. You were there. The moment he steps in, playoffs, right? And then you have the Super Bowl in year 2, right? And then 2019, which was a down year. If the Rams, which you were also there, if the Rams, are playing in today's NFL with the 7-team format, they're in the playoffs. Then 2020, which is kind of a weird limbo year. The defense is fantastic. The offense isn't quite where it needs to be. You're still like, okay, this team still can do something. They win a playoff game. The next year, they win the Super Bowl. This year, it took all sorts of injuries to take them completely out of the playoffs and out of having a winning season for the first time in Sean McVay's career as a head coach. Snead deserves credit, no doubt. And Kroenke deserves credit for allowing Snead to make these moves, for being okay to spend money. But the fact of the matter is this. He does deserve blame for other things. There are different ways that they could have gone about this season. They are paying $74.5 million to players that will not contribute and will not be on the roster in 2023. These are the facts. So my thing here is when you get rid of Jalen Ramsey in a season, you get rid of Bobby Wagner, you get rid of Leonard Floyd, you get rid of Allen Robinson, and the most you have to build off that, the most you have a third rounder, you have Hunter Long, who is a third rounder who is now worth a 7th rounder, in my opinion, maybe not even. And you get a 7th round pick swap that you moved up a little bit in the draft in the 7th round. Oh my God. That much talent going out, that much money being paid, and just not a lot coming in. That grinds my gears, and it is becoming a serious issue for the Los Angeles Rams. And if this continues, there's going to be a problem. When you have all sorts of, fans saying the Les Snead special as opposed to pick swaps, that's not a good thing, man. That's not good. Mm-hmm. I like Les Snead. I better not see a draft house this year, but I do like Les Snead. And I like Sean McVay, the way they work together. And I think they're top 10 at each position. And I'm not calling for Les Snead's head. I don't think he should be fired. But I definitely think that it is a serious issue for the Rams because the constant do right by this guy, do right by this guy. Well, the last time I checked, and I know I do this with a former NFL player, and we are a player-friendly podcast here, or player-friendly show. Anytime you and I have a tandem, we have an understanding of each other. We support the player, but you can't have it both ways. You can't be like, yeah, we totally, we're all about getting Jalen Ramsey to Miami, so we're going to take less, or we got to do right by Allen Robinson because he wants to go to the Steelers. We're going to get less. You can't do that, but then also say, it's a business, so it's a business decision. Like, if you want to do right by Robert Woods, who was a team captain and a guy that fit the offense like a glove, don't trade him to begin with. Figure out a way to keep him. I don't have to tell you. I mean, you were very adamant about Bobby Woods being a guy, there in that locker room. But that's where I'm at, because you can't have it both ways. You can't be like, do right by the player. It's a business.
Jake, one thing I will say, I do hope that Les Snead has something up his sleeve. I know I said it before, but I hope he has something up his sleeve. And that's why I said I'm not vibing, right? I have that crazy faith where Les Snead's going to be like, gotcha. I'm hoping he's like,
here for it.
Gotcha. And I do think, Jake, What I'm hoping for, we call it hopeism. What I'm hoping for is with these minimal trades with some of the teams like the Dolphins, like the Steelers, I'm hoping that they have something worked out where it's like a gentleman's handshake, like, hey, like I'm gonna do you a solid right now, but in the future, let's figure this out. So that's what I'm hoping for. So Jake, what I will say for I'm not gonna vibe. I'm gonna go opposite of what you're vibing with. I'm not gonna vibe with it because I think he has a long-term plan. I think he is going to flip the script on us, Jake. Come the season. I think he's gonna flip the script, and I want to put a pin in this moment. I think in this draft in this offseason, because when the time does come where it's like, oh, I see what you did there, Les. So I'm looking for one of those moments. It's a hope is a moment, but I have faith in my guy, Les Snead.
Well, and I'll say this to your point, Cam, and that was a really interesting thing you made, like the handshake. I like that because the gentleman's handshake. You could argue that's what happened with the Broncos before they got Von Miller. They did trade away Kenny Young, and they got pennies for him. And then all of a sudden, it's like, hey, we need a linebacker. Our linebackers go down. You give us Kenny Young, and then we'll give you Von Miller at the trade deadline. Weeks later. Interesting little thing there. I'm not going to say you're wrong.
Yeah.